Welcome to the Poetry Box Live. I'm Sean Avaninga Sanders, and we're so happy that you could join us today. For those of you who may be tuning in for the first time, my husband Robert and I run an independent press here in Portland, Oregon, known as the Poetry Box. And to help support our authors reach a broader audience, we host the Poetry Box Live on the second Saturday of each month. And for today's show, we have three amazing poets who will be reading from their brand new books. Today's featured poets include Kathy Kane, joining us from Oregon, Annette Gagliardi, who's a Minnesota poet, but joining us from California today, and Rachel Barton, who's also joining us from here in Oregon. So let's get started with our first featured reader. Kathy Kane's new book is The Weight of Clouds, an intimate celebration of how our spirit is surprised and enlarged at the moment of perception, when the weight of reality is balanced by that of our imagination. Kathy Kane is both an artist and poet. She has also authored three previous collections, A Shape of Sky, Bee Dance, and Empty Space Places You. Her honors include the Kay Snow Paul Ann Peterson Award for Poetry, the Edwin Markham Prize for Poetry, and a first place win from the Oregon Poetry Association contest. Her poetry has appeared in the Poeming Pigeon, Read Magazine, Verse Weavers, Voice Catchers, and elsewhere. Please welcome Kathy Kane.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you for being here today and for sharing your time with Annette and Rachel and me. And thank you always to Sean and Robert for being so amazing, for supporting us, for bringing our words into the reality of a physical book. And also thank you for hosting this reading. So, The Weight of Clouds. And this is dedicated to my sister, Gloria, and to our families. The first poem I'll read is called Flight Patterns. Scribbles float on the surface of my painting. Lines that articulate the sweep of my shoulder and arm, my hand as I dip the toe of my brush in the sky. Lines that soar like contrails. Lines like the fleeting borders of clouds, like the arcing florets of cauliflower or popped corn, square dance reels or a ballerina's leap. Lines like the chaos of children playing chase, or a cinnamon bun swirled, or perfume. Lines like sand dunes or piled trash can lids, or the tops of distant maple trees. Like a jump rope looping high from its snap, or hallelujahs. Like the freeway cloverleafs of LA with traffic like Marionberry Jam. Lines like a thought sparking between stutters, like fingernail clippings flying to the sink, or turkey vulture swoops, or a fern's uncurling. Lines like a handle progression, a Willie Nelson waltz. The swipe of tongue against a stamp, the deep pull of an overhand crawl, smoke in a breeze punctuated with ash. Lines like a wail in the night, the edgy demarcation between figure and ground. Lines like my arms encircling you, round and round. This next one, there's a reference to Necessary Angels. And in this case, Necessary Angels are the poets of Wallace Stevens, who coined the phrase, our necessary angel is our imagination. The thought of a big conference of angels makes me happy. All that happy white thrown across the turquoise air. I mean our cloud gowns, pushed and stirred by the wind. A quickness of clouds, ideas of order and laughter flowing, our banter and textured exchanges. One angel raising her hand to her face, a silver bracelet on her dark wrist. Another with one blue shoe. a third with disheveled, sun-touched hair. The excitement of our encounters with old acquaintances and friends, a smile of recognition, occasionally a rainbow of surprise. Necessary angels, we contemplate the expansive view below, with talk of shining water in clear glass vases, brilliant white cosmos, the smell of snow, warm biscuits with berries and cream, a child asking an innocent question, even the thorns rip or fevers fit or sudden absence of a lover's flesh. We have such grand appetites for prismed life. The enormity of our awestruck tears, even the gorgeous, outrageous ecstasy of the water cycle, the continued turning around, our delight when once again we rain down. Thank you. This is called The Flight Attendant, and it would be a European flight. The flight attendant stands over me. In her hand, silver tongs clasp a warm, moist towel, clean and white. A small cloud folded at the middle, draped and hanging there. With my face turned up like those before me, I raise my child arms. With open palms, receive the beautiful damp wings. Choir. My sister's painting, large on the wall. I turned it upside down, white on white with thin pencil work, like the edges of clouds. A touch of blue mist and salmon dawn. Transparent angels lined up like a choir for the morning celebration. Shoulders almost touching, 3 rows of 10. Only there are no angels, just 30 freely drawn ovals, floating high, alive, glorious. This one's called Apple Picking Time. Here I am by my garden gate, listening to a frog warn about the apple, the snake. Up in the leafy green, I ignore his croaks and pick more red blushed fruit for this day's bake. Then I step down, snip back the last fade of rhubarb, prepare for winter, harsh and hard. It's plain talk, that's all I've got. Barely time left to put a stamp on this card. I'm no Pollyanna, that's for sure. But I hope that spring won't be a lie. I'll meet any weather we might endure with these savored bites, sugared licks, and maybe the entire pie. In the garden. She has 2 daughters. One brings gray stones and desert sage. The other brings the sky. Today, all 3 waltz barefoot in the grass at the edge of the bay. In spite of rising seas, they step in harmony, as if to the sound of a lute that sings along the lane. Notes like alder leaves falling in the quiet churchyard. Notes like pieces of broken pottery the girls find in the mud when the tide runs low. Shimmers of the history of touch. The touch of her husband on this land, a touch as precise as a lute player's hands, moving with restraint over the strings, the frets. The morning light like a Renaissance song. The girls not in homespun gowns, but in baggy shorts and tops. As through the blueberry bushes, they weave imagined ribbons. Bushes that are old and taller than the chimney on the fire pit stove. Taller than the smokehouse with its fishy racks. A dance of such grace through the garden they tend that the deer come out from the woods to watch. A dance luminous as the mounds of white oyster shells piled near the docks. The light a melody moving across water. In 2018, my husband and I went to Italy, flew to Italy and had a wonderful trip, which inspired the poems for a whole section of this poem, of this book. And I'll read one here. This one's called Florence. Florence, not the city, but my grandmother Florence, holding me, a child in Los Angeles, city of angels, holding me, not the city, but the angels above the warm white sidewalks and the sea over there. After I learned to point west and to watch jets up there, after I learned to rise into the sky, before I flew to Florence, the city, the angels of Florence holding me, not the angels, but the paintings, pinks and reds, green undershadows of flesh and gown, capes of midnight blue, even the opaque shapes of gold, the tension between control's fine line and rapture's abandon, the gesture of an upturned face, an outstretched arm holding me. This one's called Cradling Dad. I hooked up to the galaxy of the centrifuge, my milky platelets swirling like stars, like swifts into the chimney of night. I held the dream of him, the rhythm of his breath. How he loved the Milky Way, how he needed the stars. Then the swift dark wind, those stars like blossoms scattered, then the snap of bough that could not cradle nor hold against the relentless cold. This one's called Apology. I was looking at the clouds and missed my turnoff, but it was okay. Maybe it's okay to let the clouds be in charge, since they are. We all have tatters in our wings from translating the language of dreams. I remember my child sitting on the back porch steps, gazing at the sky, chatting away to himself, as he shared with the listening clouds how he hurt, how I didn't listen. Even angels may misstep, make mistakes. And so once more, I wish to say, I am sorry, dear child, in the shadow of our house, with your bare feet, your tears, a white flower in your hand. I'll read two more. This one's called Child Made of Clouds. 6 years old and jumping on the trampoline of his time machine, launching into the sky of the playroom. His vision for the journey, his detailed calculations as he falls back to earth, wisp of his blonde hair rising. He says, I know how to fly and how to swim, but I don't know how to take care of my baby brother. the nag of the first loose tooth, and quickly the next, kooky gaps in his big smile. He says, once I had 3 dreams. That is rare. He says, that angel, paint blue stripes across his shirt. He should have dark blue shoes instead of red. I do not like red shoes. Maybe a red hat. He never questions the angel's wings. He says, I am fluid mostly, really. This is the last one, grace. Grace, one of those words that still works for me. One of those words I hope to keep saying a little longer, feeling that I want to go on forever, at least a little longer. Thank you.
Oh, Kathy, that was just breathtaking. And, all your visions of clouds and what you pull out of it. I think about, as a kid, how we all played that game, lying on the grass, looking up the clouds, seeing all the pictures, asking our friend if they see the same thing. But what you see in clouds, wow. And what you see in everything around you, that innocent of discovery, you just take it to a whole new level of insight. And I can't help but wonder, what a beautiful world it would be if everyone took a little more time to be amazed at the beauty around us, and even in our darkest moments. And I just can't thank you enough for writing this book and for sharing these beautiful poems with us today, Kathy. It was just lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean, very, very much. I appreciate it. I hope you all were able to connect with at least a few of them.
By their reactions, I'd say yes.
Thanks again.
Our next featured poet is Annette Gagliardi, the author of A Short Supply of Viability, which offers poems of compassion for the compassionate in her exploration of caregiving and its physical and emotional toll. Annette Gagliardi is a Minnesota writer, author of Proper Poems for Ladies and a few naughty ones too. She is the contributor and co-editor of Upon Waking, 58 Voices Speaking Out from the Shadow of Abuse. Annette has poetry published in Motherwell, Wisconsin Review, Origami Poems Project, Amethyst Review, Poetry Quarterly, Sylvia Magazine, and many others. Please welcome Annette Gagliardi.
Thank you. A Short Supply of Viability looks like this. Let's see if I can get it up there. Well, thank you for having me today, Sean. I really appreciate this opportunity to share my work. Thank you all for coming. As I was helping out my aging parents over 20 years ago, I began contemplating and writing poetry about caregiving. Later, I had grandbabies and we take care of them, and we're still taking care of them. More recently, my mother-in-law came to live with us for a short time as she was diminishing from Alzheimer's. And we were also taking care of our grandchildren at the time. So all during these years, I've been writing poetries to help me contemplate, to help me figure out and deal with the caregiving of others while I try to maintain my daily life. Now that I'm retired, I find that all my contemporaries are basically in the same boat as me. Perhaps they've planned to travel or take up a hobby or finish something they started years ago, but now they are finding their time is used up taking care of someone they love. And it's not that we don't want to take care of somebody we love, but it offers challenges. So A Short Supply of Viability is the result of these past 25 years. I wanted to begin with this short poem from Emily Dickinson. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. I'm going to begin with poems about and for my mother-in-law. And the first one is called Flamingos. Flamingos. In the last glow of the day, flamingos stand on mysterious girders, as though time were a commodity stretched beyond the horizon, like rose-colored statues soaking up the evening sun as it rolls over the water, reflecting their crimson spectrum. And now, one bends and dips her S-shaped neck into the waters that have been there for eons, rich with foraging crustaceans. No one has tried to paint their ruby hues nor count the feathers on a single vermilion wing. Yet the path to heaven is not born in shades of scarlet nor lined with plumes of red. What will I do when that special bird lifts her ruby wings to fly? And how can anyone know that she is my dearest adversary who has come to stand in my own home waters? When you shelter your rival, do your feathers reflect the sun? And who will take me in when my feathers begin to redden? Thank you. As Mom diminished with the Alzheimer's, she began telling the same story over and over again. And this is one of her favorites. And actually, it's one of my favorites as well. It's titled His Flowered Past. She tells me how he looked back then. She with her red hair, white skin, just a girl in love, but still aware enough to know her family would not accept his inky Italian blood, would see him as too dark. Chuckling, she tells how she powdered him with flour before introducing him. His full black hair and she so fair. His tall, muscular build and she so small. And the flour falling off his handsome features to his shirt front. They told her, look elsewhere, he isn't the one. But he was, he always was. He held that build to the end, even as the cancer wasted him. Kept his muscular frame despite the chemo's slow spin. His mahogany skin, smoothed, faded with the ash of illness. The streetcar rumbled every night past her corner and he on it, just far enough away to stay out of sight and the light of the street lamp. He kissed her. And she still remembers her heart racing when she and he hugged the darkness. She strokes his lush black hair. Laughing, she tells the story again. Thank you. And the next one is a trilogy, but I'm only going to read 2 sections of the trilogy. So you get to read the book and you'll find all 3. So the trilogy is A Minor Theft, and the first poem is A String of Pearls. A string of pearls like bunny beans dropped on my lawn. Each owns a memory. They call, remind me, but not her. The photo of someone she knew but does no more. Its scrolled frame slipping away in degrees as she holds it in her hands. The small trinket rubbed smooth while she forgets the telling of why it means what it means to her. Those hands worry treasures that signify something stolen, one small theft at a time. What has left her bereft, sitting in her chair, only aware of the blur, not the hour, the day, nor the pearls that she leaves as mine. And this, thank you. And the second one in this trilogy is called Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is the snake in the grass that laughs past midnight and hides in the sleeve of your new green dress, the one you wore for your high school prom and took in after you lost the baby. Those snake eyes glitter. The tongue flickers like the ones in the shoes you wore when your father taught you to dance, your feet slipping after his paced step. You wept when he died, His funeral, a great pyre of grieving. Widowed women who bemoaned his passing, as well as your mother. But here he is again, visiting you in your hospital bed with the rose-red pillow you adore, wet with tears of suffering and grief. Yet, who will look after him while you stay bedded down? You must get up and cook the meal and kill that slithering snake. Thank you. I'm going to try to read this one without crying. It's a newer poem, one of the more recent additions to this book. And my kids tell me I'm known as the weeping poet, which isn't a bad title. It's okay to cry, but anyway, hopefully I won't. Contradictions. Mom got smaller and smaller, losing weight like we all wanted to, yet her needs got greater and greater, filling up our time like foam insulation sprayed into every crack and crevice. She can only stand 1 or 2 people in her room at a time, yet more and more of us were drawn into servitude to possibly satisfy her every urgency. She ate less and less, yet we brought more and more food for her to eat, which was stacked in her fridge, around her room, and by her bed. She tasted or slightly nudged at it and nibbled, still losing weight as she feasted. She needed fewer clothes, yet we purchased new again and again. First one size, then another as her body changed. We bought new shirts and sweaters with front buttons, then no buttons, pants with elastic waists, larger socks for ease of slipping on her tiny feet, bigger slippers, softer slippers, different colored slippers, then smaller slippers, all with the hope of pleasing her, of making her more comfortable. Yet her requirements changed daily, and we were forever needing to fix one more thing until the end, when all our activity stopped abruptly, and we were forced to pack up and put away all that busy we had used to keep her with us one more day. So I wrote some for my parents as well. My mom and dad both had COPD and were on oxygen for several years. And mom died the same day as Frank Sinatra. And the story is, the thing I contend is that Frank heard mom had passed and he couldn't live another day without her. So I wrote this poem, Classic Sinatra. Frank died the same day mom did, their essence mingling with the marrow of others meeting their own demise. Sinatra might have been singing. Mom might have been humming along. The slaughterhouse barely opened, its barn red paint flaking in the sunlight, decay and deterioration running rampant among the bodies of those left behind, rotting wood floors no longer holding the necessary weight to carry on. Medications bulldoze and demolish any scant health left. Bodies raised like aged sheds in abandoned fields, slow dance with dying, no longer trying to pilfer another long day, butchered and broken into mingled segments of backstory. I choose to think Mom and Frank sang and danced the night away in that old barn. There might have been dragonflies. The sun might have been shining. Oh, thank you. One of the things that I got after my mom passed was a little ring, her anniversary ring. So here's the poem for that, Mother's Ring. The diamonds are small, barely glints along the silver band, slim, simple smile, circling my ring finger, not the marrying finger, the one on my right hand. Dad was poor, heck, we all were, but he always said only the best for your mother, spare no expense, knowing that he could afford nothing, yet somehow getting her heart's desire every time. The tiny diamond chip set and the swaled cleave signified 25 years wedded tether. It became mine to remind me to love through the good and bad. They were married over 40 years before COPD took them within 3 months of each other. If that isn't love, I don't know what is. Thank you. Part of the reason my dad had COPD was he was a gold miner in the Black Hills. And so I wrote this poem for him, Hard as Stone. My father dug into the earth in the Black Hills gold mine, 2 stories underground, his way lit only by the light on his helmet. With pickaxe and shovel, he dug, pressing his muscles into each striation of the ground, using the bundles of fibrous tissue on his back and legs that became layered like colored ribbons on an agate, becoming what he dug, what he hollowed out, the smooth, polished stone and shades of brown with mahogany, umber, and sienna ribbons following each other around the outside. And even though we cannot see them, they run through the center as well. What he dug became a cavern that grew over time with each stroke of the axe as it cleaved the rock, smooth yet hard, hard as granite, hard as the dark, deep down in the mine, hard as the days and nights he excavated the earth, digging and cutting the bedrock, creating ridges and valleys inside the world of stone, hard as the life inside our mother planet, under her crusted mantle, with her breathing herself onto him and sighing as he tore away her flesh. Hard as it is to suffer patiently while someone or something digs you hollow. Thank you. This is a true story. The cost of a limo. My friend was talking with his funeral representative and found out it would cost him $2,000 for them to carry his body from the church to the graveyard, riding in the limo. He thinks a buddy would put him in the back of his '97 Ford pickup and transport him with time to spare and no cost to anyone. Who wants to take that $2,000 ride at the end of a life filled with more million-dollar days than one can count? At the end of a life filled chock full of not enough money for much of anything, yet quite enough money to survive this varied existence and all its costliness. Who doesn't yearn to live high in the hog, riding in style in a black limo? Yet what the cost? Do we save those high-minded moments for death's delivery? Do we waste our wanting worn close to our chest all our lives, then enjoy the ride of our lives after our lives are over? Something to ponder. I don't give all the answers, I just give you ideas to ponder. Here's another one for you to ponder. It's called A Single Sparrow. Is it not part of God's design, this cosmic intention? Time is uncertain to men on earth, hidden in the moment between past and future. Yet the smallest space of redemption can pass in a flash. A sparrow shall not fall without our Father knowing. The meanest flower that blows offers thoughts that lie too deep for tears. When paths cross at a particular point in time and space, the butterfly's wings emerge, fill out, and grow as life's fluid is pumped into them. And coming into the mystery of it all, it is the thing itself. Without death, would we make any significant choices? Would we confront any limitations? When our body is buried, our ashes mix a new pattern with the sand and wind and water, our hearts flung into the void to become newly minted. What is the truer truth? You will find no remedy for the strength of love, nor the length of death. Yet, what would we do with immortality anyway? Thank you. And the last poem in the book is one of my favorites. Again, it was a more recent addition to the manuscript, but I hope it leaves you with a happy contentment or a comfort. When I die, lift me up, say my name, fill your cup of time with memories. Sing my song, yet be free of sadness and despair. Don't go there for too long. See me and your children's children in their tears and laughter. Then, after they are asleep, hold a memory of me you plan to keep. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Annette, thank you so much for that. You're right. You know, so many of us are approaching that age where we're finding ourselves in a caregiving role, whether it be our parents, a friend, our beloved spouse, or like you said, even your grandchildren. And there's so much responsibility that gets laid upon the caregiver, you know, especially like acting as patient advocate, you know, with the healthcare services or lack thereof these days.
The paperwork can be phenomenal, can't it?
Yeah, it's a lot. And yet, you know, you were very candid and honest about a lot of the different, you know, duties or responsibilities that come with caregiving, but you also wrap them in this envelope of compassion and remembering all the beauty of that person. You know, even the details of getting the different slippers, you know, to make mom or your mother-in-law comfortable, you know, as she's going through this. And that's so true. Their needs change from day to day, but if you can hang on to the little moments of joy and those little, you know, memories that you can make in those end times, I think it's so important. And I think this book is going to help so many people that they're going through the exact same thing that you've been through many times. And so thank you for writing this. I think it's going to help a lot of people. And I think it's just beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, our final poet for tonight is Rachel Barton, author of This Is the Lightness, whose poems are fired with imagination and the fragility of the human experience. Rachel Barton grew up in the woods of northern Indiana, which was greatly influenced her poetry and provided her a sense of connection to the planet. She comes from a large family, which has informed her sense of community. She entered the Oregon Writing Project in 2009 and co-facilitated the OWP's Poetry Intensive that following summer. And so she used this model of writing within a community of writers in the classroom, the community college, at regional conferences, and in private classes. Currently, she edits Willowa Journal, an online journal for poetry and art, and she also serves as the associate editor for Calyx and Cloudbank magazines. Please welcome Rachel Barton.
Hello, everyone. It's very lovely to be with you this afternoon. And thank you, Sean and the Poetry Box, for hosting this reading. It's very nice to hear Kate and Annette read from their books. I've been curious. I'm reading from This Is the Lightness, which is coming out next month. And I will just dive in. This is a kind of a tour through the book. I've given you something from every section. I will be giving you something from every section. Sometimes my universe. Sometimes my universe is so small, folded in on itself like a silk scarf at the back of a dresser drawer, voluminous in a good breeze, but melting to nothing in the hand, or pouring out like water. I should wonder it matters at all. Star maps and obelisks pop out of the creases, and shouts of I am roll with the highlands and sloughs, peppered with oak, maple, birch, and yew, mapping a green life, emphatically declaring I am. We breathe ourselves to life, feeling our way through oceans, tremor of deep vibrations, a rush, a glow, a rash, a sigh. Color the ethers in waves, tide lines rimmed with star clusters, so many opportunities for grace. Drop the clod of earth, sink to your knees, let the damp soak to your skin. Mulch, peat, loam, mud, the answers to our prayers and dreams. Drape your scarf to catch the light. Every side is your good side. Late winter disquiet. Trash bins pace themselves on Mondays, hug the curb on the lip of going gone. An interval of heather backs them, crowds in its violet way the sidewalk, where children scramble, old folk amble, only skinny people can pass. Dried stalks of fuchsia, yarrow, and sage provide no nectar for a hummingbird, who lights and lights and lights, then darts away. Only the kale, an oasis of miniature palms, rises green on tall, thick stems, ruffled leaves spreading cover over weeds weary of the cold and haze. A yellow lab unleashed peers around the hedge, scans the yard of yapping dogs across the road, then resumes his patrol. I watch as his nose leads him down the block to leave his scent around the corner. So much below ground goes unseen. Together, we hold space and wait. Mile 99 Glacier View. I dwelt for a time on the mountain, slept in a cave of a room, beneath the high lookout, where mountain peaks through every window wore the winter's monochrome of black and white, until the morning light radiated from behind the ridge, the rugged edges sharpened and shimmering in a pale gold. Sun risen, the sky shifted from dove grave to robin's egg blue, gently hued and faultless. We breakfasted on coffee and apples, bathed in the late light of dawn, while grosbeaks convened in a naked tree, swooped in pairs to the feeder. Sometimes we wore our PJs all day. Girl in the woods. Girl in the woods, hair wild with twigs, could be eating dirt or sucking roots, her skin the color of bark. I expect she may have grown, at least in knowledge, living with the leaves and bones of trees for so long. Trace of her in the ash trunk, sheathed in lichen, branches festive with clumps of moss, a scattering of red leaves like torn ribbons, and in the boughs of the larch, a light snow of reindeer lichen like lace. Smell of the woods follows me, from many trees standing close. She is in my breath, my lungs, the sap of her my blood. She breathes me in. Thanks, everyone. Owning my tribe. 1. Burrs tag the boy's socks. He sheds to the floor the little glyphs of dirt, the size of his treads, the traces of grass and mulch he drags in from outside. He can't be troubled. His task is to blend the inner and the outer, keep his foot in contact with solid ground as often as possible. He knows he is a conduit. 2. Midnight creeper, the man scuffs his naked feet across bare floorboards to the cupboard of pills and cookies, sleep aids to counter the pains of cranky joints. Swish and sweep in near sleep, his being is massive, ankles tethered to the center's iron core, his head in a swirl of distant galaxies. 3. Twice in a dream, he cautions me about the hair growing on the bottoms of my feet, a soft dark bristle spreading like the pampas along the outer edges and creeping into the arch. What tribe beckons, wants to pull me in? Middle-earth's dark tunnels and grottos are mapped along the back of my hands. I am not afraid of my own kin. A call. Twice yesterday, I sensed a sinking, deep water, a longing to shut out the noise, empty the lungs, sit unruffled on the sea floor. Dwarf maple doesn't know the drop of summer yet. Clustered points of early leaf green couple with the dongle of miniature flowers, jingle in the wind like soundless bells. A slate of sky obstructs the mountain view, threatens rain. Will I find my keys in time? Will the scaffolding hold? We'll lift ourselves as high as we can. High is good and always up. But sometimes, no matter the dark or wet, I just want to go in. This is a poem for my friend Frida, who passed a year ago almost today. She gives me things. Usually it's a jar of chutney or fig paste, chocolate if she's beating me at Scrabble or cribbage. But yesterday it was underwear size 7, too big for a frame, thinning into its 95th year, no matter she stands almost 6 feet tall. Which reminds me of my sister, shrinking to her girl size in the grief of post-divorce. She runs to catch the ferry one morning, finds her briefs around her ankles, has to stop, pull them up again. I guess a pair of panties can be too big, she tells me after. Wedding singer Adam Sandler accepts payment from his elderly music student in meatballs, sometimes without a plate. When I ferry Frida around town, she gifts me with new white cotton undies. She puts them in a bag. That was my humorous one. This one is not. This is the title poem. This is the lightness. Wave of nausea at the crack of dawn, common language of brainstem tumors. He asks for the kidney-shaped basin. I rise, then stumble back to my unfamiliar bunk in the dark. Hear a quiet rustling of sheet against skin as he seizes. My father's bulk, like gravity, in the bed next to mine. I don't turn on the light. My orbit around him slow to fade. I wait to turn on the light. Prayers from my lips float in the air like dogwood petals, white against a slate of sky. So light, so close, I can poke them with my finger. This one I wrote after the Kavanaugh hearings. It's called Falling Out. When I fall out of the apple tree, the world slows. Like falling out of love, it is a gradual process. The step stool and body can't in sync. Then the pillowed thump of back and backside coming to ground, head bouncing as an aftershock. I do not see the sky spin sideways, the ground rise up to meet me, though it does. I do not feel the old self fall away, the windfall of identity shattered. Oh, frailsome youth, this country mine. Now it is late, and I find myself weeping, my body slightly altered. Pain is all around me, but it's not all mine. Sometimes things fall apart or fall open. I fall open like a book. You see the bruises flower in the margins. You feel the spine submit out of habit, and there is no going back. We cannot unlearn what is true. Only a matter of time. My husband's brother, Lee, says he's been sitting in the front pew since his older sister passed. The privilege makes him a little anxious. He stops time in his wood shop, keeps the rabbits from the lettuce, his grandchildren circling around him. Steve says he's in his last quarter. I dispute his math, but his sense of rounding a corner to the finish hangs in the air like a clothesline of socks that won't dry, or a vexing dream only golf or a golfing poem will relieve. My sister gardens above the glacier till the snow overtakes, mentoring the young folk like she does her yellow toms, her final score of 20 years reflective as an after-dinner conversation on her sapphire blue couches. I'm too struck with the beginning myself to anticipate the final chapter, beginning to feel at home as if after a long time away. Why would I think of leaving? Now I have a couple longer prose poems from the last section. On employing Einstein's special relativity, with thanks to Ludwig Bemelmans, who is the author of the Madeline books, if some of you might recall, children's books. I feed the dog at 7 a.m. and think about climbing back under the covers because I missed an hour when I woke at 4. the deficit already a nagging along the right side of my neck and across the top of my head. In the bathroom mirror, my eyelid reveals an extra fold and deeper droop, right eye at half-mast. Head returned to pillow and both eyes closed again. I strive to regain the lassitude of pre-sleep, pull the covers tighter and tuck them under my hip, over my shoulder, hem of flannel snug beneath my chin. The strains of the tune that was in my head before I popped up revisit, A Christmas Carol. Too late in the season, but I don't really care, because I'm beginning to drift away from the body, away from the pain. My mind slows my departure. In the middle of the night, Miss Clavel turned on the light and said, "Something is not right." Why did I wake at 4 a.m.? And what have I done to merit this discomfort? This is my routine, you see, to try to identify the migraine's trigger and an exhausting recounting, like a runaway train, of what I ate or watched or read or experienced that may have put me over the edge of this event horizon and into the shadow of a migraine storm. If it's not a prolonged standing on cement floor, or walking all day in unfavorable shoes, or milling about at an overcrowded public event with Klieg lights overhead, think theater or box store, it's usually something I ate. For instance, it was probably the pizza. By using this stratagem, I am in control, though I'm also always to blame, which is a bit of a hammer to an already sore head. I relegate the ongoing train of my recounting to background noise. The threat will either gain momentum or fade away. At some point, I will rise to navigate the hallway, listening to one side or bumping outright into walls in order to open the medicine drawer and finger the small tablet in the foil packet. I will tear it open expertly and swallow the pill, cradle my head in my arm on my pillow until the pain begins to subside. When I do get up, free of pain, my mind will feel flat. I will have no ambition, though a mild euphoria may visit me by the late afternoon. For now, I will just sleep a little longer. Thank you. A question of seed. How much seed do you need to sprout some grass before a mess of birds calls it lunch? How deep can you bury a seed before it smothers in dark soil? And how can you rely on the seed's sprout to steer itself towards sunlight? Does it really work every time? Or do some seeds go deep and down to sprout into the backyard of some kid in China? 2 years ago, a garage annex, the tent leaves a 12 by 12 foot impression in wet soil, which the sun now warms unimpeded, testing the long-term memory of grass, which once flourished here in a bushy green carpet. Long before this, men and women rode across our grass prairies, their wagon wheels rutting a trail whose traces you can still follow west. Would you call this memory or scar? My friend Nan bought some land in the Texas Hill Country and hauled her household goods and tools across a couple acres in a big truck. Even years later, mourning the traces of ruts those behemoth treads drug across the low hills she learned to call home. How long do we have to feel bad? We have left the snow moon behind us and look for rain, the calendar less reliable than it used to be. Sunlight pulls us from our winter caves to look up at the dome of blue where clouds pillow a distant ridge. My husband drives to Peoria for seed to hold the soil firm so the dog does not drive it all indoors. Any kind of seed will do. Thank you.
Oh, Rachel, that was wonderful. I love the journey you've taken us on throughout the whole book. All the different sections are each really unique, and that's really a fun read. Your poetry is really relatable. The way you share just like everyday moments and actually tackle some of the issues that we can all relate to, that we all face. And your use of language and imagery really drives it home. That description of having a migraine and trying to figure out what caused it, and even opening those, I know those little foil packets with that little bitty tiny white pill that you're so afraid to lose because it's so hard to get it open and you're desperate for that pill. I thought that poem is just one of the most brilliant poems ever. I just love it. The whole collection is stunning, and I really want to thank you so much for sharing with us today, Rachel. It was wonderful. And for those of you who haven't ordered Rachel's book yet, because hers comes out next month, we do have it on a pre-order at a discount until August 20th. So be sure and check out the link that's in the chat. Let's have a giant round of applause for all of our readers today. Yay. And I want to thank you, our audience, for joining us for another edition of the Poetry Box Live. It means the world to us that you joined us here on Zoom to celebrate their poetry. Our next show will be on Saturday, September 10th, featuring David Gonzalez, author of Soundings, P.M. Draper, author of After Pyre, and Michael Watterson, author of Cosmology and Heaven and Hell. To keep up to date on upcoming shows, new releases, and submission opportunities, please subscribe to our newsletter by going to thepoetrybox.com, where you'll find a sign-up form at the bottom of each page. So thank you again for joining us today. We look forward to sharing more poetry with you next month on the Poetry Box Live.
Thank you for coming, everyone. Much appreciated on this beautiful day.
Wonderful poetry. Lovely.
Thanks for listening to us.
Thanks, Deb.
Very
Been a
much,
pleasure.
very delightful.
I'm
We-
sure we
we
hope
have
you
a late
enjoy. I'm speaking for all of us. I hope you enjoyed what we read.
Yes.